Hey there, people leaps. So it's time to review a TV show this time. Yeah, I know movies are my priority, but at the same time there are some TV shows that still need to be looked at. And the one we're looking at today is the puntastic The Mask animated series. Get ready because there are a lot of them.
Looking back. Ah yes, obscure cartoons. It's amazing how things change when it comes to different demographics and where exactly certain things originate from. The Mask is definitely one of those characters that has seen all ends of the spectrum. Originally conceived by Mike Richardson, founder of the Dark Horse Comics brand, The Mask was one heck of a psychotic character. Designed to be a hybrid of a Tex Avery cartoon and the Terminator in some ways, this icon of a wacko became rather popular. Just look at this grin. His teeth are the size of his eyeballs. At the time, though, the nickname of the character was called Big Head, which was for obvious reasons.
Mind you, the character was created in 1982, which was a much different time instead of the 90s, because this cartoon conformed a lot to that era than it was to its origins of the 80s.
What made the comic such a success was for a couple of reasons. For one, it was violent as hell, mostly because it began in the 80s, where hardcore violence, drugs, and rock and roll were at their peaks. Another attraction was how the mask exaggerated every person who wore it. It was a tool that enhanced the emotions and actions of anyone using it by a bajillion times. This, of course, led to some pretty insane adventures. Lastly, what probably made it the most captivating to read was the fact that since the mask reinforced anyone's personality while wearing it, meant that they were filled with all kinds of pop culture references and all sorts of fourth wall breaking jokes associated with their interests. Oh, and on top of that, the person in general would sustain all kinds of lethal injuries and walk it off no problem, because they were a literal cartoon character. Deadpool eats your heart out in every way of the word.
If anything, Screw Attack should have done a death battle between these two fourth wall breaking jokers. Heck, Channel Awesome's done a comparative analysis on their comic book versions. Get with the program, Screw Attack.
Then came the 1990s, where the culture changed. At this point, it was also the end of having violent PG-rated films. And seeing that all kinds of other studios were trying to make comic book movies with the success of Richard Donner's Superman and Tim Burton's Batman series, it seemed like the right thing to do. The problem was the effects needed to bring the character to life on the big screen, which was still in its infancy at the time. Sure, Terminator 2 Judgment Day came out, but that was just getting integrated. It was also only until Jurassic Park that really gave movie studios an idea of what could be done with this technology. By the early 90s, a Canadian actor by the name of Jim Carrey was gaining a following for his rubbery, cartoony antics on various stand-up acts. Seeing that this was his forte, he was cast as the main lead to the live-action adaptation of the first Mask story.
However, being that this was no longer the 80s and the rating system had changed, the tone and level of darkness had to be cranked down.
Thus, instead of the movie being a direct adaptation of the comic book, it was more of a softer version of the story and more comedy-oriented. It still has adult humor, but nothing at the level the original comic started at. Yet, the preconceptual ideas thrown around as to what Carrey would look like as the Mask before the movie was released would have said otherwise. And it's probably just because this was in more of the drafting phase of things, but still, that looks way more intimidating than it should be. And disturbing, for that matter. And as many of us know and remember the movie, The Mask was a big hit in theaters and skyrocketed Jim Carrey to the top of his career. But that wasn't the end of it. And no, I don't mean the failed attempt of making The Mask 2 with Jim Carrey, nor do I mean the actual failed sequel, Son of the Mask. I am not going there.
Oh, hell no!
Where I am going is the animated series that spun off from the movie. Not lasting that long, the show only went for 3 seasons from 1995 to 1997, and was sporadic in a number of episodes it gave in each. But seeing that The Mask had reached children's television, then it should be rather evident what I meant before about this character making it into every age bracket. For the most part. From one of the funniest comic book movies to the downright worst in sequels, with origins from the most insane and violent comics to the most harmless and mildly goofy TV shows. The Mask has basically seen its fair share of ups and downs.
And as much as everybody loved the comics and the first theatrical film, and as reviled as the sequel was to it and as hated as it has been, everyone seems to forget this underrated TV show.
Overall plot and writing. The show was more or less a loose continuation from the events that unfolded from the feature film released the year before, bank employee and local wimp Stanley Ipkiss continues his life as usual, even though his dog Milo managed to pick up and retain the mask. From this point on, it's all kinds of new villainy that come about the town of Edge City, and it's up to Ipkiss to be the reluctant hero. And as much good the mask is able to do, it always leaves Ipkiss crawling back to square one, with Lieutenant Kellaway and his buddy Doyle on his tail. This is not always the same formula, but this is more or less how most of the episodes are set up and finished. And since this is not an educational show, the stories themselves don't exactly have to be told in an exact order. Some stories are one-off adventures, while others connect to past events. Sometimes they only feature the mask, not even Stanley Ipkiss. Of the seasons, none of them had any particular focus on certain topics. It was just adventures of the mask, then of which would be turned into its own set of comic books and later be made into an omnibus collection.
I'm not sure why that was necessary, though. Making an ongoing comic book series for an ongoing TV show, it seems kind of redundant. But hey, more mask stuff.
Now, as for how these stories play out, they have their similarities to that of the set of comics mentioned before, and it also borrows source material from the darker elements of its roots. For example, a Frankenstein-esque henchman by the name of Walter is introduced, and he's basically built like a tank. Nothing can hurt him, not even when it seems like the odds are against him. Except here, the villain person barking orders around is Pretorius, a mad scientist of sorts. While in the original comics, Walter was just as tough, if not more, and worked for a gangster. But as time went on for both paperback and television mediums, Walter kind of just strays off. Sometimes he's with his master, while other times he's out and about. It's funny because sometimes the show does reference its origins.
It's those guys!
What happened to Big Head?
Ah, I see what they did there. Heck, even references to other comic book properties have been mentioned.
Each fragment possesses a different characteristic. Fragment 2 will transform a man into an unstoppable being made of flame. Fragment 3 will bestow a man with elastic properties. And the 4th, a strength-enhanced man of unbreakable rock.
Gee, I can't imagine what he means by that.
Aside from these little tidbits, though, the rest of the antagonists the mask faces off against are more or less one-off villains. There's only a small handful of reappearing villains.
When it comes to the writing in general, there are several things that have gone on with this show that may not exactly thrill everyone. First of all, much of the information is missing on the IMDb page. Look at this. Julie Murphy as director. Only 16 episodes? Who the heck else did the others? There were way more than that. Well, since Murphy's the only credit here, she would later go on to direct other episodes from TV shows like Hey Arnold, Danny Phantom, The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, and Chowder. For writing, the people listed here are all over the place. Of the 28 writers listed, many of them have shared credits, so I'm definitely not going through all of them. However, it is interesting to know some of the other works these guys and gals have been on. Steve Roberts worked on Max Headroom. Alex Van Dyne later wrote for the Batman TV show. Dean Stefan worked on Cat Dog. Thomas Hart was with Disney's Kim Possible. Dwayne Capizzi would end up being a producer for Kids WB's Jackie Chan Adventures. Henry Gilroy has lately made stories for the Star Wars Rebels show. Ernie John had some experience with the Ace Ventura Pet Detective show. Ralph Soule was with the Tick show. John Luden with Pinky and the Brain. And J.D. Smith helped manage the Beetlejuice cartoon.
Now, do all these names ring any bells? Probably not all of them, but if anything, it demonstrates that they have gone on to do other roles that people might recognize.
So what mistakes exactly does this show make during the episodes? A bunch of things, actually. Since this is a continuation of the feature film, the fact that Peggy Brandt is still around is surprising. Originally, she was supposed to be killed off, but it was cut from the finished film. But even so, how could Stanley stomach being around her after she sold him out in the movie?
Okay, so I sold you up the river to some mobsters once. Can't we put that behind us? Oh, Stanley, I won't let on you're the mask. Promise. Reflex?
You're the only one who knows my secret. Well, you and Milo.
Yeah, nice going. Universe continuity is another problem in this series. As stated before, each episode is more or less a random set of events that happen. Only some of them actually have to be played in a certain order for past mentions to be understood. However, with that said, if these stories were to be watched in order, certain things are handled in such ways that moving past those events would forever change future stories. Which begs the question, how exactly do these hold up then? I mean, yeah, The Mask defies all kinds of logic, but sometimes it just doesn't feel right after that. What really doesn't make sense, though, is just how gullible the people of Edge City really are.
And when I mean gullible, I mean plain as day, can't put two and two together gullible. I mean, the visually impaired could do a better job than these numbskulls.
For realsies. The iconic look of the mask never changed from movie to show, and yet several people who experienced those events with Ipkiss still can't tell it's him. Stanley's coworker Charlie Schumacher can't figure out that when the mask is around, Ipkiss is gone.
Oh, please. The paid entertainment is too slick, not fluffy enough. Here for the traditional Ipkiss touch. Indeed. The Ipkiss touch.
Where is Stanley anyway?
Really? The mask was literally right there. People can't even tell it's him when he's got the silliest of disguises on.
Look! She's the witcheth, and she's casting a spelleth on us alleth. Tis true! Grab her! Right!
Or when Stanley himself got mistaken for a scientist.
Oh, pish posh, Dr. Proctor. No apologies necessary.
He's wearing pajamas.
I told you he was a nutcase.
I think you have the wrong person.
Oh, nonsense, my humble colleague.
See, even the other characters know he's a big fat phony. The Mask even ran for 2 different offices, the first being mayor of Edge City.
If elected, I promise a chicken in every garage. No, make that a water buffalo.
Yeah, but where do you stand on the toxic waste issue?
I love it! Toxic waste in every garage, too! Just making sure you're listening.
Toxic waste, stinky, no good.
And there's the time he became the right-hand man of President at the time, Bill Clinton, or at least a liking of him.
What do you say to the other politicians who are trying to run you out of office?
Somebody stop me.
Somebody stop me.
Very good. Excellent.
He's really standing up for his beliefs.
He won't be bullied. And good soundbite.
Yeah, like any of the news media would have behaved like that now. And that time he was being court-martialed after signing up for the Marines.
Your Honor, I object to this testimony. It's irrelevant and immaterial.
Oh, yeah? Well, you've got a really bad toupee.
Oh, my gosh! It's alive!
I'll get it, Merle. There. That rascal won't be giving you no more trouble.
Yeah, all these scenarios are things people should obviously know better about. Yet it's taken in a literal manner.
Now, don't misunderstand me. These episodes do have their moments, but sometimes it's so blatant that these residents of the city don't even get it. It's just so questionable.
On top of that, the show has been plagued by some pretty lame and controversial episodes. Mind you, of which all occur in Season 2 for some reason, and are all in pairs of 2, for the most part. Which is really weird if you ask me. We'll start out with the least critical to the most. So one thing a viewer will notice when watching Season 2 is the fact that certain scenes are replayed. Why? Could be that the studio didn't have enough money to make a new scene. It could also be that maybe the writers were just forgetful, or even worse, they were lazy. This particular faux pas occurs like it was almost a mistake, but not really. Here are the examples.
Yowza! Oh, baby, they're playing my song! Somebody stop me! Yowza! Oh, baby, they're playing my song! Woo! Somebody stop me!
Ooh, they played his song twice unexpectedly. What are the odds? Well, actually, it is odd because I forgot it happens a third time.
Yowza! Oh, baby, they're playing my song! Watch me work, people! Watch me work! Conga line!
Then there's the moment involving the same villains.
Just back off, man!
Whoa!
Now that's a new one. Gotta save it for the file. Just back off, man!
Whoa!
Now that's a new one. Gotta save it for the file.
I can't help but feel like that was already recorded in the Mask file. And as you can see, both repeated scenes are a close match, but if one's not paying attention, it'll sure give the viewer a case of deja vu. Which of course can get confusing.
It certainly did for me. When I first saw it, I thought maybe I was watching a previous episode, when in fact it was repeated.
The next pair of mediocre episodes are the lame fillers. They aren't completely void of new material, but they are very much a rerun of other episodes. The scenarios to be depicted is one where the Mask and Lieutenant Kellaway fail to disarm a bomb, and then they end up going to the afterlife where they are judged upon their actions. This leads to flashbacks of other episodes.
He doesn't deserve to get in! I demand a hearing! No, not herring! Hearing!
Your request has been granted. Let the hearing begin.
Ever since this nutcase turned up in Edge City.
The other episode very much sets itself up the same way. Instead, this time Pretorius holds a hearing of his own with a few of the Mask's past villains. There they discuss what exactly went down by recounting those events from, guess what? Yeah, the other episodes.
He wants you to talk about your run-ins with the Mask.
Why did you say?
Why did you say in English? Not his first language.
What are you, stupid?
Now, who'd like to go first? How about you?
Oh, I would, but the thing of it is I've got this terribly inflamed larynx and...
Shut up, Pete.
And start talking.
By the time the story ends for both, however, the situation is handled uniquely, but again, sitting through all that back-in-time crap is just ho-hum writing. Seriously, nobody cares. Just come up with some new material. You got all those writers, and this is the best you could come up with? They are literally one-time watch episodes. More so, the banned episodes are the entries that are the surprising ones. One of which was actually a flashback episode. That was the Afterlife entry, believe it or not, because of the whole depiction of death. Showing the whole scene of people standing over a grave and the two prominent lead characters being judged by a bunch of angels. Take this with a grain of salt, though, because I remember seeing mentions of this episode being banned, but I cannot locate anything on it now. And for all I know, I could very well be wrong because in an earlier episode in this season, the Mask is visited by the devil himself. So I don't know how that was acceptable, if the other one wasn't. However, here's the real kicker. The other episode that was banned for legitimate reasons is quite an eyebrow raiser. In an episode where the Mask ends up losing his lucky feather to his banana suit hat, he ends up chasing it all over the place. Upon one of these spots, his feather comes into the crosshairs of a political conspiracy.
Mr. Mayor, it's that exotic dancer you were dating.
Get her out of here before she ruins my wholesome image.
Out of my way, pipsqueak!
But, Miss Baboon, you can't just...
Oh, can't I?
Oh, dynamite.
That's right, 2 megatons worth!
But this isn't even the biggest blow to the show. The real damage comes when the Mask removes the explosives from the female bombshell, pardon the pun.
Yeah, this actually happens. And as to why or how anyone thought that was a good idea, putting that on children's television is beyond my comprehension.
And although no actual graphic nudity is shown, it certainly doesn't leave much to the imagination. And of course, that's not to say the original Big Head Mask character wasn't at this level. But being that this version was aired on children's programming was not a smart move. And as an adult now, it's goofy and rather poor in its timing. Thankfully, it only lasts for a few minutes, then moves on to other things less objectifying. The last thing for writing that would not be in the viewer's best interest is how the show ends. And I know not every show is going to end in the best of closure. Some really do well, while others are left in a giant cliffhanger. What made this show interesting was the fact that with the success of The Mask and the Ace Ventura Pet Detective movies, it was decided to have a mini crossover between the two Jim Carrey character cartoons. The last episode of Season 3 deals with Milo being dog-napped by Pretorius, only to have Stanley Ipkiss hire Ace Ventura to relocate his missing canine. What transitions this show to the Ace Ventura cartoon was by having old Ace snatch Ipkiss's mask. The unfortunate part is that it doesn't really end with anything conclusive, leaving the Mask show high and dry in the sky.
It's a unique crossover for sure, but it's no way to end the show. And as much as I like the Ace Ventura character, I tend to neglect this particular ending just because it fits in with nothing else.
Yet with all this said, there are still several moments to enjoy. One of the more subtle references is how much of the episodes are a play on other titles. The two-part pilot to the show, The Mask is always greener on the other side, instead of The grass is always greener on the other side. Or A Comedy of Errors, which is taken from A Comedy of Errors from Shakespeare. How about The Good, the Bad, and the Fish Guy? A variation of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Love Potion number 8.5, as opposed to Love Potion number 9. There's Cool Hand Mask, like Cool Hand Luke. Or even When Pigs Rule the Earth, a premise very similar to that of Planet of the Apes. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. The best parts about the episodes that aired was how much of a pickle the Mask could get into. That and the challenges he was put up against. Some of which were downright laughable, but at other times proved to be a formidable danger to the existence of not only the Mask, but Edge City itself. There were a number of moments where the Mask is put up against an object that is more massive than he is. For example, a flaming meteor headed towards Earth, or a space shuttle containing a chemical that will remove all moisture from the planet. What about a nuclear missile being launched just to level Edge City? How about coming in contact with another Mask of the same power? Being hermetically sealed inside a TV isn't what exactly it's all cracked up to be either. Getting trapped in a constant time loop like it's the Groundhog Day movie is no fun, I'm sure.
And these are just some of the scenarios Stanley Ipkiss and his alter ego come across. And for those who don't remember the episodes, if you were to revisit all of them again, it is quite entertaining to see how they are actually resolved.
Here, though, is the real reason why The Mask show is one of the best. All the pop culture and character references. Now, of course, some of it is dated because it aired in the 1990s, but that's what sometimes makes it all the more fun to revisit. Plus, there are jokes thrown in that even older folks might be more inclined to know about. Here's a moderate selection of clips.
All right, Bugsy, we got you surrounded, see? Come out with your mandibles up.
So, we meet again.
Ooh, a talking head. Mister, I'm gonna wash your mouth out with bug spray. Yeah. Everybody knows that common household putty loses its elastic properties when doused in canola oil.
You didn't know that.
Nobody clears a room like you, Walter. Say, this place calls for more appropriate attire. Wardrobe! So, you think you know Kung Fu? Okay then, let's fight!
Ladies and gentlemen, in this corner, weighing 273 pounds, 8 ounces, the Masked Mask!
I will destroy you! Proceed with the experiments.
And now, I will do the box.
He's good, but what is he, some kind of clown?
Not bad. Need something.
Oh, you knew this was coming. Hot enough for you, Leatherface?
I'm a-calling you out, so draw on 3. 1, 2. What happened to 3? Must be the new math.
Must be spring cleaning time.
Eat space dust, robot trash!
I am Spider Heiny. I know what you're thinking. Gotta cut down on the snack foods. But check it out. Ha! Let's see a tick or an earthworm do that. Uh-oh, my Heiny sense is tingling.
I love when that happens.
Who are you?
The ghost of Christmas future. Your future brings a gift from the mask. Beware.
It's not a watch. Well, kids, that's our show for today. Now go out and play, read a book, or pick a fight with your siblings. Me? Since my dance card is apparently kaput, I'm just gonna have to settle for my second favorite pastime. Revenge!
Can you say revenge?
Oh, you could! You leave me no choice. Hunger! Feel the wrath of my feather! No reaction.
Ground floor, laundry world, hall of cheese, and the International House of Velcro.
Note to self, never step on a bug again. It is very painful.
What am I doing? I hate spinach.
Get away from him, you glitch! Messing around with Headstrong is my racket!
Capture him! Capture him!
We have a K, S, A, and an M. What is today's magic word? 5 seconds, Corpsey.
Chop.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's incorrect. My fellow Americans, as I say farewell, I do so with a heavy heart. Well, that's a little better. And I want you all to know one thing. I am not a crook. Oh, man! I'm stirred and shaken. And where's that draft coming from? 'Tisn't exactly what I had in mind. Ah! I cannot change!
I'll have real strength. I've always been kinda frail.
Yeah, you're a real girly man, all right. Your arms are like red noodles, so soft and skinny.
Evening, ma'am. Special Agent Scuzzy Moeller. Your country needs your help. A giant radioactive meteor is hit nearby, ma'am. We plan to break it up and store it in as many airtight containers as possible. Tell me, would you happen to have any Potterware?
Would I? Here, take it all.
More importantly, this barracks is a total fashion disaster. It needs a complete makeover.
Stop the presses! Stop the presses!
I always wanted to say that.
Smoking! Is not allowed in this section of the brain, monsieur. I'm afraid I will have to ask you to leave. Security!
Better check the PC.
Boot up! I'll take medical history for 1,000, Alex.
I am Biclops. Feel my Teen Mutant angst.
Think I need a stronger prescription.
Tough guy, huh? I'm Toolverine, and I've dressed space scum like you in 20 quadrants. That ought to lighten your loads, Tin Man.
Hey, nice looks, man. You'd be the not-so-little mermaid? No, man. The big, ugly mermaid. Heavy. Very heavy.
Will you get serious? I can just shake you. Thanks to you, we're stranded on some strange planet 3,000 years in the future. Are we gonna do?
Well, I say we check in a nice hotel, take in a sight, see a few shows.
Tell us where we can find the Galactic Avenger.
Better get a pencil. Go past Snoopy's doghouse and hang a left at Beetle Bailey's bunker. It's next door to Mary Worth's place. You can't miss it.
The galactic adventure doesn't exist, comprende? Just like you don't exist. You're make-believe. You're nothing but a fanboy fantasy from some artist's pen, you get it? You shouldn't even be here!
Tell me, Peg, what do you do on Earth when you want to get someplace?
You whistle. You can whistle, can't you, Peg? You just pucker your lips and blow.
Sir, I don't believe you were invited to this party. This is a private function.
No, Alfred. This is a private function.
This is a snore!
The show even does its own parody on the Animaniacs known as the Goofalotatots, consisting of Pinko, Stinko, and Snot.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here to join these two in jolly matrimony.
Strike free! Now!
Tots, this means war. Get him!
Mind you, these clips are just one moment in the episode, when on average, every episode has about 4 to 5 character references inserted, which is a lot.
That and the puns. Good lord, the puns. It's all about the visual gags and the wording behind it that makes the comedic writing work. Here's some more clips.
Let 'em rip! Whoa! Talk about your hardened criminal! On the way! Mayday! Arbor Day, Mother's Day, Dennis Day, Doris Day, Groundhog Day!
There, that's much better.
Sure. Did you like hanging out in bars?
Right, Uncle!
Don't get ahead of yourself.
Here! Gotcha! Maneuver! Getting Charlie horse!
And what are we gonna do about these parking meters? Off with their heads, I say. Thank you for that spontaneous outpour. Glad you feel that way because I've decided to throw my hat into the ring and da-da-da, run for mayor! Yikes! I'm missing the early bird breakfast at the Bluebird Diner. Whoa!
Time's just whizzing by.
Bud. You'll never be a winner with that kind of attitude. To think they were scared of a little flag. Look, Ma, I'm making an ash of myself.
Good citizens of Bavariaville, and assorted others, lend me your ears.
Kinda asked for that, didn't I?
Don't listen to him, Chet. You gotta stop this. You're out of control. Enough.
Say, Stan, you got any aspirin? Because we are about to get a splitting headache.
What happened?
Take that, you little squirts. Speaking of dull, time to rise and shine with Chef Bask's fast rising yeast. Now that's what I call fluffy buns.
Yo, Mean Doggy! Gnarly radio waves today. You wanna hang 10, bro?
Now that I've seen your fall preview, how's about giving me my stuff back?
Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. Thank you. I come not to praise my favorite taco stand, but to see it blown to smithereens, along with my Sonny Chiba video collection.
Like heck, nobody flushes my town down the tubes.
Bubonic plague. We may have to quarantine the entire building. You seeing spots before your eyes?
No.
You are now! Do I have star potential or what? Special effects!
Well, there goes my chance to rake in the dough.
You insolent swine! Feel the power of my wind! Soon as those chili burgers kick in, you're gonna feel the power of my wind!
Howdy, partner. It's me.
Something stinks in here.
Ta-da! Just your typical head of steak.
In honor of this momentous occasion, I'd now like to present you with the Presidential Seal. You know, Doyle, you really saved my green eggs and ham back there, buddy. And to show you my appreciation,
I'm busting you out with me, see?
And just how do you plan to do that? We're lost.
Does the phrase
blow out your ear mean anything to you?
Call this number. It's your key to psychic fulfillment.
Didn't see that coming, did ya, my little psychic friend?
By the ghost of oil can Harry!
I think I need to jump.
All right, Tiny. Drop the lass, or I'll shiver your timbers. Look what your meddling has done. Now we have an armed lunatic on our hands.
Hey there. Sorry to just drop in like this. I'm just such a ham.
Take note that not every pun is hilarious, but it's the idea that makes it funny. Either way, what makes the writing great in this show is just how much it was able to be crammed into each story that somehow utilizes those references in its favor.
And I reiterate, these are just some clips from the show. To watch seasons 1 through 3 all in one shot is quite an energetic and wacky ride.
Actors and characters. When it comes to the characters and the actors who voice them, the main cast does the job well. Many of these actors voice other minor characters, and for those who have good ears will be able to pick out who's doing the extra lines. Starting out with the star of the show is Stanley Ipkiss and his alternative persona The Mask, voiced by Rob Paulsen. The way Rob Paulsen imitates Carrie from the movie, but also gives it his own spin on things, is commendable. Ipkiss is still as wimpy as ever, and through these stories, viewers will see him go through all kinds of crazy situations.
Pardon me, a parsec.
Hello?
Stanley, I gotta know. Did aliens steal your brain? Or have you just lost your mind?
Oh, come on. What's wrong, Chuck, huh? Too much oomph in my presentation?
I just needed to use the ladies' room.
Whether that be finding a woman who actually finds him to be a decent guy, or if it's being harassed by Lieutenant Kellaway and company, as hard a time Ipkiss has getting around, he still manages to stay above water, which is pretty impressive.
Hand over your money, pal.
Okay, just don't panic. Stay calm.
Cash, credit cards. What's this? $200 for a dog license.
You believe that?
Highway robbery. They're all crooks. They're politicians. The watch.
Oh, yeah, sure thing. But look, I really don't have the...
Whoa! Now let's work those tired, achy muscles with a little massage.
Hey, owie! Oh, it doesn't bend that way!
Wow, the cappuccino's ready.
Thanks. I could really...
This is for me. You're in no shape to drink cappuccino, dude.
He also learns things about himself along the way and what kinds of things affect the mask.
This fabled 11th century mask was known as Master of Darkness, Eater of Children's Brains? Peggy, help me! I'm a brain-eating ghoul!
Oh, pooh. It's an 11th century superstition. TV is the only thing that eats children's brains nowadays.
Now, wait a minute. The mask was rude to my date. What if that's the first sign of the hunger? Hey, look, buddy, give me a break, okay? I'm just a dork who works at a bank, really. Working at a bank is all I do. Please don't hurt me.
Yeesh, pal. Don't you have any self-respect?
Not a nickel's worth. I'm a coward. Hamsters scare me. You want to see my yellow streak?
Ooh, you're pathetic.
Yep. Head code.
Stanley, could you please explain what's going on?
It's simple, Peggy. I can't wear the mask until I recover from my cold. My life depends on it.
As for his mask persona, Paulson's voice work on the green-head goofball is crazy fun. Changing his vocals from lighthearted to heavy-duty to energetic to mimicking other kinds of voices is hilarious. If anything, this particular role allowed Paulson to really shine and use his voice in all kinds of ways. When it comes to cartoons, voice actors normally have to stick to a specific vocal pitch and persona. Here, though, because the mask personality is based on Ipkiss's interests, which are TV and movie mediums, the mask fully encompasses those traits. And the fact that the mask can create objects out of thin air and withstand some of the most lethal injuries is fun to see the character walk away with comical wisecracks. Either that or tricking his opposition into something they wouldn't normally do.
Okay, people, quiet on the set. Ah, you must be the stinky no-good henchman.
The mask.
Center, people, center! Were you born in a barn? We do not look at the camera, fourth wall and all that. Actor!
I thought I loaded this with flags with funny words on them. Firearms bad.
Something is haunting the streets of Edge City. Something wicked. Something weird. Good evening. On tonight's episode of Really Weird, Bizarre, Way Out, Funky, Unbelievable, and Unsolvable Mysterious Happenings, we tackle the important questions about the shadow-stealing phenomenon. 1. Who is behind it? 2. What do they want? And 3.
Will they give mine back?
2. Only one thing to do. And it's gone! That head is heading non-stop to Hawaii!
When you get Australia, drop me a postcard, Bruce.
All right, Doomsday Device. You're no match for... Handyman. Hey! This card isn't from Alonzo's All-Star team. It's from his prison team! That's it! The trade's off! This card is like totally bogus, bud.
There's also a good number of times he breaks the fourth wall.
Smoking! Oh, ow, 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 hot foot, ow! Yeah, I know he tried to waste me and I should probably let him fry, but this is a kid show after all. Come on, one of these things has got to work. I don't want to miss one strangle-holding second! Ooh, I love television!
You, Mr. Mask.
You know, this is why I love summer repeats.
I think you'll get a real charge out of this. Won't he, folks?
That's right. What will the mask do? Stay tuned until next time for the shocking conclusion.
Oh, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't. This ends right now. Wait! You have to save us!
Why? Because I'm the hero of the show, huh? Is that it? Why? Is that it?
Oh, yeah. But if you let us fall, who you give wedgies to?
Now, for those who don't know who Rob Paulson is, here are some of his most famous roles. He's voiced PJ from Goof Troop, Raphael from the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon, Pinky from Pinky and the Brain, Yakko Warner from Animaniacs, Carl Weezer from Jimmy Neutron, Boy Genius, Jack Fenton from Danny Phantom, and Mark Chang from The Fairly Odd Parents.
And just a heads up, many of these voice actors have big names already, so there's a good chance you'll know them from somewhere.
Tagging alongside Stanley is his trusty dog Milo, voiced by Frank Welker. Being that Milo is a dog, there's not a whole lot the canine could make vocal-wise, but Welker is certainly able to sound like a dog. Making the regular barks, growls, and yelps that a regular pooch would make is performed well by him.
Whew. Oh man, that was close. Milo, buddy, that mask is really dangerous. Don't you ever let me use it, okay? Very little bow wow. This is gonna hurt us both, but not in the same place.
But of course, because Welker cannot only do that, he makes noises and vocals for all kinds of other minor individuals.
And this is Nilrum.
Nifty costume!
Can you breathe in that thing?
Oh, that's no costume.
Somebody stop me!
Frank Welker is another major voice actor, having over 800 credits to his name, which is insane enough. Welker is beyond the point of legend, playing characters like Fred from Scooby-Doo, Megatron in the Transformers show, Abu from Aladdin, Dr. Claw from Inspector Gadget, and the list goes on for decades. Following up on Ipkiss's tale are the cop duo Detective Doyle and Lieutenant Kellaway. Kellaway is voiced by Neil Ross. What he does for Kellaway is make a funny counter to that of the free-spirited Mask. Everything the Mask does gets on Kellaway's nerves, more because he can never seem to catch him. Ross is great, though, at making Kellaway rigid and thick-headed. Even when something happens that isn't caused by the Mask, Lieutenant Kellaway thinks otherwise.
Order launchers at the ready! Let's see how funny the Mask is with a face full of tear gas.
You sure the Mask is behind this? I mean, we haven't even seen him.
Once I flick this remote, all of Edge City will know the meaning of must-watch TV.
Not so fast. I don't know what you and the Mask are up to, but it ends here.
Wow. A Technotron 2000 Universal Remote. Can I take a whack at it?
Doyle.
You can't escape!
Well, since you put it that way.
How would you boys like to slip into something a little less comfortable? Like, oh, say...
Talking to me? You must be talking to me, because I'm the only clown here.
Oh, weasels. It's funnier when it goes down the pants.
Batman knows comedy.
Doyle!
Even at some point, Lieutenant Kellaway realizes things viewers may not even think possible, like when Peggy wears the mask.
You adore me. You desire me. You want to marry me.
I do?
And I do too, darling. I now pronounce as husband and gorgeous, glamorous wife.
Or even when the mask actually saves Kellaway.
Maybe you're not such a bad guy after all.
Does this mean we can be bowling partners? I'm moved. I'm touched. I'm glad we're on the same team.
Atomic wedding!
Ross may not have a filmography as extensive as Welker or Paulson, but he still has a number of roles to his name. He was John Rambo in the cartoon of the same name. He played Bone Crusher in the Transformers show, and even the Codex narrator in the first two Mass Effect video games. Detective Doyle, on the other hand, is played famously by Jim Cummings. For Doyle, it's the same thing every time. Eat and take things way too literal. What Cummings brings to the table is Doyle being dopey, but likable all the same. He has a good attitude and always thinks about giving people the benefit of the doubt.
I read you, Lieutenant. Attention, rampaging dinosaur! Pull over to the curb! I repeat some more. Pull over!
And they say that dinosaurs have small brains.
Bet you didn't know I was an amateur magician. Watch. I'll pull this egg out of your ear. Okay, give me a magic word.
How about you annoy me?
Excellent, that's a good one. You annoy me.
We've got it.
Lieutenant, we missed!
Doyle, I know.
However, this isn't the only character Cummings also uses his voice for. There are a bunch of other assorted characters.
But what about the mask?
Like my great-granddaddy used to say when facing the Yankees, there's only one way to lick a problem this big. Ignore it up something fierce.
Hello? You wanted to see me, sir?
Mr. Ipkiss, you're wacky. And our clientele seems to take a shine to that.
And even an exploding man named Kablamis channeling his inner evil Winnie the Pooh.
Have no fear, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, I do not use my awesome power to harm, but to entertain.
Cummings is, of course, another well-known voice actor for partaking in roles like Afterburner from the Transformers show, Winnie the Pooh in general from the late 1980s onward, and even Tigger to boot, Razul from Aladdin, Bonkers the Bobcat from Bonkers, Steel from Balto, Darkwing Duck from Darkwing Duck, Cat from Cat Dog, and again the list goes on. Lastly, Tim Curry voices Pretorius, the Mask's biggest nemesis. And like many other characters voiced by Tim Curry, the performance is a guilty pleasure. Pretorius is not the greatest of villains in the history of villainy, but he does try really hard to make his plans see the light of day, albeit they are not that very consistent. Sometimes he wants to cause chaos, other times he wants to take pictures of Martians. Occasionally he'll want to rule the world. I don't know if that's just him changing his goal after the mask stops him, or if he's just trying to see what sticks.
Okay, if this is some joke, I don't have time for it, because I've got an envelope to mail, mister!
I assure you, Mr. Ipkiss, this is no joke. Do you find a disembodied talking head funny, Mr. Ipkiss? I think not.
Well, Jethrine, I have developed a new tissue rejuvenation serum. What do you think?
You know what I always say, nothing like a good jacuzzi leaves your skin feeling all tingly and... I'm indecent! So let's rumble!
Since you enjoyed the spa, you must try the mud bath.
Either way, Tim Curry is a very strong highlight to the show since his distinct vocal cords make him stand out much easier than the rest when it comes to antagonists. Tim Curry, of course, has had a mix of appearances in live-action filmmaking and animated roles, playing in movies like The Rocky Horror Picture Show, Clue, It, Professor Finbar Calamitous from The Adventures of Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius, Prince in Garfield 2, and even Darth Sidious in Star Wars The Clone Wars. Walter I'm also going to mention here because he's usually in conjunction with Pretorius. And since he has no voice, it's easy. He's just a silent but dangerously tough opponent to the mask. Anything that gets thrown at him barely does anything at all.
Arr, ye scurvy scalloway! Prepare to exchange broadsides! All right, forget the broadsides then.
Madame requires your romantic atmosphere for her affair, oui, no?
Walter, you can fit nicely into my plans.
You know, I really hate to wreck a good piano, but you're worth it! Out of tune. Wedgie!
Okay, so this covers the main characters and the voice actors that play them, and how much they reoccur. Now we're going to go on to the lesser ones that are the supporting characters and who plays them.
Stanley's friends are about as unsupportive as they come. They aren't all complete jerks, but they also don't really help Stanley in the pursuit of his happiness. Peggy Brandt, voiced by Heidi Shannon, is alright. Again, she helps out Stanley a bunch of times, but about half of them are to further her profession as a reporter.
The front page, you say? Make it a 5x8 at least. How about a foil embossed die cut cover with a free trading card inside? Let's try sassy. It's for my fans! My love, say please. Don't forget my good side.
Stanley's really gonna hate me in the morning.
Hello.
Peggy, not again! I've got a whole new problem.
What? Oh, no rest for the wounded.
For Shannon, she is far less involved with her career as of now because her latest credit was in 2001, mainly of which her credits were to video games like Star Wars Jedi Knight Mysteries of the Sith and Star Wars Galactic Battlegrounds. Working as Stanley's coworker is Charlie Schumacher, voiced by Mark L. Taylor. For Schumacher, it's practically never about his friend. There are only a couple of moments when he means genuine sympathy, but the rest is all what he can do to stomp on anyone else's toes.
She's a caged animal waiting to escape. She'll eat you alive.
Go on. I can't. No, go on. I don't even know the words. Just walk in the door. Go on. Okay, all right. Hi.
Yeah, so why bring me here?
Brainstorm! We take some initiative. We impress our boss. We whip this place into shape. Well, you whip while I supervise. I need you to do the annual audit by tomorrow morning.
But you're the bank manager. That's your job.
I'm delegating. Oh, and Stanley, can I borrow your tux? I want to make a good impression when I meet Davida.
Charlie!
For Mr. Taylor, he's been around the block. He's been in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, Arachnophobia, and Homeward Bound: The Incredible Journey. Now let's move on to other characters that are more neutral in their positions and just tend to get caught in the madness all at the wrong time. After his comical appearance in the original film, Ben Stein reprises his role as Dr. Arthur Newman, Stanley's psychotherapist. And just like his first appearance, Stein maintains that persona throughout the show, as droll as ever. Every line he says is about as unenthusiastic as possible, but that's on purpose, of course.
Mr. Ipkiss, I find your fantasies intriguing. I recommend you visit a safe haven for them.
Wait, you don't believe the mask is real?
I'll believe you if you promise to go away.
You think I'm crazy, don't you?
I don't think you're crazy, Mr. Ipkiss. I think you're making it all up because you enjoy annoying me. What if you were the inner child? What if you were to do the opposite of what you normally do? Act like the mask, that is. You might achieve the results you want without him. It's called reverse psychology, and it's all in my new book. I'll put it on your account.
Thank you.
You're all harboring a classic case of what I call maskophobia, fear of a certain green-faced no-goodnik. My latest book, available in fine bookstores everywhere, deals with just such a phenomenon.
Although Stein is well known, he actually hasn't had a number of famous roles. He's probably best known for his role from the original movie, the economics teacher in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and the Pixies in the Fairly Odd Parents show. Then there's Kevin Michael Richardson, who plays the mayor of Edge City, Mortimer Tilton. Throughout the show, much of his dialogue is dealing with two things. The first being the mask's antics, or the other talking about what a great job he's doing for the town. As mediocre as it is.
It's no surprise that the mask is a vicious criminal. If history has taught us anything, it's that people don't commit crimes, masks do.
He's a liar and a fake! He's not a real Tilton! He's a puppet candidate!
Strike the set. We're gone.
The mask won't be a problem. You won't even know he's here. I promise, and not a campaign promise, a real promise. Please, do we have a deal?
You're in for it now, Buster.
For pity's sake, man, let her go. She's giving me a migraine.
Put me down! You can't do this! My son's a police lieutenant! All right, he's not a very good one, but you're still gonna be very sorry!
For Richardson, since he's a guy with a big, deep voice, his best roles were the ones that involve rough and gruff characters with big, booming voices. He's played Goro in Mortal Kombat, CMC Scott Dolph in Metal Gear Solids 1 and 2, Skulker from Danny Phantom, Jabba the Hutt in Star Wars The Clone Wars, and Maurice in The Penguins of Madagascar. Alas, there's also Mrs. Agnes Peeman, Stanley's landlady played by Tress MacNeille. Mrs. Peeman is not that very likable for her personality, but she is funny to see react to the mask and all of his over-the-top antics. She's also one of those elderly ladies who knows how to wield a shotgun.
Your TV's too loud!
Mrs. Peenman, you are just in time for a waltz. Yep, up, and dip. Is this so fun?
I ought to cut your liver out.
I'm standing here talking to a voter who has recently changed her opinion of the mask. Mrs. Peenman, I understand you and the mask have had your differences. Was it his stand on parking meters that turned you around?
No, I want a water buffalo in my garage, and I love to limbo.
Of course it was his stand on parking meters! I'm not a candy store!
Trick or treat.
Ah!
Not too funny for a clown.
Absolutely!
As it can be seen and heard, Tress MacNeille is the type of voice actress who has what I would call a Rod Stewart voice. Not clean and smooth like some other women's voices. It's stern and brash, but that's why she's the best. She's also the voice of Dot from the Animaniacs show, Shenzi the hyena from Disney's Timon and Pumbaa, Arnold's grandma in Hey Arnold, Linda from Futurama, and Agnes Skinner from The Simpsons.
Okay, so those are covered. Now let's move on to the cesspool of villains that have to be looked at. And also keep in mind, some of the voice actors mentioned before may play some of those characters too.
Among the villains, the characteristics change from mutants to regular people and out-of-this-world type creatures. First on our list is Putty Thing and Fish Guy. Originally two comic book nerds wanting to have powers, decide to become radioactive only to accidentally get their powers. Of the two, only one of them actually got useful abilities. Putty Thing, more or less a knockoff of Batman's Clayface, is pretty much that. Fish Guy, however, is more or less a fish, except he can breathe, air, and talk. Together they call themselves the Terrible Two, but really it's only one.
Okay, a little more to the lab. Perfect.
Intense. Comics.
Cool. What's it about? Mondo humorous.
Somebody stop me!
Oh, this is so bogus. Splitting me up from my best and only bud.
At least you're going to prison, Doc. They're sticking me in the aquarium.
No way.
The two characters, respectively, were played by Cam Clark and Jeff Bennett. Clark has played characters like Leonardo in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles series, Simba in Disney's Timon and Pumbaa, Private Fredericks in Mass Effect, and Liquid Snake in Metal Gear Solid. Bennett was in productions like Looney Tunes Back in Action, Drix in the Ozzy and Drix Show, Johnny Bravo in the self-titled show, Peppermint Larry from The Marvelous Misadventures of Flapjack, and Kowalski in The Penguins of Madagascar. The late Glenn Shaddix voices Lonnie the Shark, a big balloon sharp-toothed crime boss. Aside from his looks, it's not clear as to if he's known for anything else. He doesn't possess any powers. Maybe he just had a lot of plastic surgery done. Either way, Shaddix's smooth, deep vocals make Lonnie just as intimidating.
I'll never be able to explain this to Lonnie.
Explain what, Pete?
Oh, I was, explaining to the guys what a genius you are, coming up with this whole Barnaby angle as a cover. Blimey, son, me up!
You'll have 6 of these, this one in triplicate, I'll need a cosigner on this one, and 2 forms of ID. Press hard, you're making 4 copies.
Nice try, little man. Distract my minigun and I'll rip out your spleen. There it is, Pete. You know what to do. Now hook this up to the boat and we'll quietly tow it away.
Shaddix was in big movies like Beetlejuice, Demolition Man, The Nightmare Before Christmas, and The Little Engine That Could, which wasn't such a big movie. Victoria Carroll plays a time fanatic known as Dr. Amelia Kronos. For her, it's nothing but time that she looks forward to, and she also poses one of the more detrimental threats to the mask's world. She's certainly out of her mind and knows how to cackle.
What's the use of attacking me now, when I can jump backwards in time and zap you then? Now you know why it's called a stopwatch. Need the time? I have the time!
Carroll was one for having a filmography that went further back than others, playing in shows like Hogan's Heroes and the Incredible Hulk cartoon. Jason Marsden plays a ghoulish kid by the name of Skillet who keeps his youth by stealing shadows. With Marsden's voice being fairly recognizable, it can be hard to take him as the Skillet character. But he puts in a good performance too. He's about as dark as they come when it comes to dark humor. Something the original Mask persona would have definitely been on board for.
Stanley Ipkiss speaking.
Hello?
Happy Halloween, Stanley. Will you be wearing a mask tonight?
Who is this?
How about a hint? 4,000 years old? But don't look a day over 12. Keep up my youthful appearance by stealing shadows.
Come on, we'll boil Shadowland denizens in oil, flay their skin from their bodies, split their spines like boiled lobsters.
What kind of sicko do you think I am?
Say, could we give him atomic wedgies?
Sure.
For Marsden, he was in Robot Jocks, played Disney's Max Goof in general, Kovu in The Lion King 2, Simba's Pride, and Richie Foley in Static Shock. And as mentioned before, Jim Cummings plays a villain by the name of Kablamis, also known as Joe Blow. Channeling his Sterling Holloway voice from Winnie the Pooh, Cummings makes Kablamis a fun character just because of how evil he can make Winnie the Pooh sound in retrospect. Kablamis is strangely obsessed with balloons, but that doesn't stop him from making destructive devices out of them, even though his original intentions were somewhat innocent, which was to make an unpoppable balloon. Instead, he became that.
I scream! You scream! We all scream for Kablamis!
Pardonnez-moi, I believe it goes, we all scream for ice cream!
You gotta quit mangling our cultural heritage, bub.
Mango! That's a great idea. My new balloons turned out exactly as I'd hoped. Whimsical, colorful, a veritable cornucopia of fun. You see, my pets, Daddy doesn't really want to be a criminal. He simply needs to share his gifts with the public. That's all I ever wanted.
And I've already said what Cummings has done, so moving on.
Alrighty, now let's complete this list with the least important characters, which would be the one-off villains. And mind you, I'm only covering the ones that actually had memorable performances and appearances.
Conchata Farrell plays a tough cookie criminal by the name of Wilhelmina Bubask. And seeing how she is as an actress, her voice fits the role really well. She's not only rough around the edges, but she even has a liking to Walter. If that's not gutsy, then I don't know what is.
$50 a dog was the deal, not 40.
Well, raising the 10,000 for the contest prizes tapped my capital.
Listen, Chintzy Chaz.
Cheap Chucky.
I know this contest is bogus. I know there ain't no 10 large. And if you don't want everyone to know...
Okay.
Walter.
You know Walter?
The brig. He was in men's cell, Block B. I was in women's cell, Block G. Walter, Wilhelmina Bubask. Wanted in 15 states.
For Farrell, she was in movies playing supporting characters like Edward Scissorhands, Mr. Deeds, and Krampus. There's another character voiced by Neil Ross, and that's Sly Eastenegger, a hybrid name of Sly Stallone, Clint Eastwood, and Arnold Schwarzenegger. And believe it or not, Ross successfully mixes all those mannerisms in one from those actors, which is fairly impressive. He has the looks of Schwarzenegger, the speech pattern of Stallone, and the lines of Eastwood. Eastenegger's a well-known action star hoping to make a big comeback in the film business. However, the mask ends up getting in the way a lot.
So you want to be an action hero, huh? You gotta be tough. You gotta be strong. Hey, you gotta not shave. Well, Punky Doodle, do you feel lucky?
Cut! Stop the cameras!
Hey, yo, I'm the director! Only I say cut and stop the cameras and, things like that. Hey, get off my set! Hey, I'm an action star, all right? Not a kindergarten cop.
And since I've already covered Ross, next actor. Jonathan Harris plays in one episode as Satan himself and gets Stanley stuck in a contract that could stick with him forever. But in the episode, he is called Bub to nullify the actual term he represents, even though he's got a demon-looking shadow. Hey, maybe Skillet should go after that one. Harris is definitely a different kind of energy. He's more along the lines of a knockoff Vincent Price, but still creepy in his own way.
This can't be.
Trust me, it be.
Yeah, but this says I'm going to...
Yep, going to the big sauna, the land down under. And I ain't talking Australia.
Harris unfortunately passed away in 2002, but did participate in shows like Lost in Space, Battlestar Galactica, and was in Toy Story 2 and A Bug's Life. Gary Owens plays a TV nut, once known as Raymond Nielsen, but after having a bunch of TVs fall on him, he became channel surfer. Yeah, there really is nothing to understand about that incident. It's because he likes TV so much he wants to make everyone watch what he watches. Of course, the mask disrupts that, though.
How about something wholesome for the kiddies?
The only thing worth noting is Owen's voice box because of how unique it is. He sounds like a TV announcer, which would explain who made the Buzz Lightyear of Star Command show intro.
Calling Buzz Lightyear, the galaxy's greatest hero. Skilled, courageous, and ever vigilant. Leaping into action, Buzz Lightyear hurtles to the rescue.
Owens passed away in 2015, but would also play other announcer roles in The Green Hornet, Garfield and Friends, and That 70s Show. Cree Summer even has a couple minor characters, but her main baddie role went to Mrs. Peaman's niece, who just so happened to have a cursed amulet of the evil cheese queen Gorgonzola. What Summer substitutes for lack of interesting characters is her energy and power behind her voice. She may not have the biggest villain role, but she does mean business when she's around.
Now that's a cheese wedgie.
Sorry, that's just not my color. You got anything in a nice blue cheese?
Starting out as Penny from the Inspector Gadget TV show, she then played Kida in Disney's Atlantis: The Lost Empire, Nebula in the Guardians of the Galaxy TV show, and many other TV shows. Whittling our way down, Dan Castellaneta plays a war flashback character from Stanley's high school years known as Chet Bozak. Unfortunately, Bozak was a bully to Ipkiss, and the feeling didn't wear off that easily. Castellaneta makes an interesting choice, though, because although he's not the easiest on the ears, he is funny. Especially when he gets his hands on the mask and he dukes it out with Ipkiss. It's quite a showdown.
Join the dark side, Stanley! Shit! Give me the mask, come on! You're not the right personality, I don't wear it! Are you kidding? I haven't had this much fun since I glued wood to your skull!
Here, make yourself useful and take care of Laughing Boy!
For Castellaneta, he's been known for doing a lot of voices, but his most iconic was Homer Simpson from The Simpsons. He's also voiced Genie in Disney's Aladdin TV show, Earthworm Jim in the lead role, and Arnold's grandpa in Hey Arnold. Finally, there's Jess Harnell, who plays the most oddball villain of them all, known as the Phony Frenchman. Dressed up in the weirdest getup, almost like PJs, has an exaggerated accent and really has no powers, comes across more as a nuisance. He actually poses very little threat to the mask or anyone else, yet somehow they are at odds. And we don't even know the history as to why.
Monsieur Mask Man, you think you are so smart. Eat my fondue!
End of the line, Frenchie! It's time to give up your phony French ways!
Ha! That's funny!
Jess Harnell played Wacko Warner in Animaniacs, Ironhide in the first 3 live-action Transformers films, and Tim the Bear in The Cleveland Show.
Quite honestly, I did not have to mention even that last character because he was a joke. He really was a pathetic villain in general. But I wanted to mention him anyway because that's how ridiculous some of these characters get. Now that we're done with that screwball of a list, let's move on to the next segment.
Action and animation. The action involved in this series is phenomenal majority of the time. Because the mask can create anything he wants out of thin air, the cartoon wackiness that ensues is fast-paced and crazy to watch. Whether that be using physical tools like mallets, projectiles, or random things that somehow become useful, the mask finds a way of utilizing all kinds of objects to his advantage. Sometimes he uses his own body as an offense or defense mechanism. It's insane stuff, and to be that creative takes a lot of thinking power. On top of that, there are the rapid wardrobe changes the mask switches in and out of with his Tasmanian devil-type spin. And as for animation goes, it can be a mix of mostly good to downright silly. The season with the best animation would go to Season 3, where the character movements and expressions are more dynamic and smooth. Seasons 1 and 2 are more of the same, though, in quality. It's alright, but there are moments where things are just off. Animation errors are a big one.
She doth not seem impressed by the heavy metal look, forsooth. Slim, Montana, I done warned y'all not to be robbing banks in my town. Now I'm gonna have to take you in. But first...
Green hands? Really? And that's the pilot episode. Sometimes the shading is off on the characters too.
The French have decided to lend us the Eiffel Tower for a week in exchange for Buddy Hackett.
Ipkiss! I just made your apartment the official Eiffel Tower observation site. The first tour comes through tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. sharp.
That's not being very consistent at all. Even directional positions can be off.
We could have driven, you know.
I get better mileage.
Ipkiss! You have one of these too?
There's only one, and it's mine! Hand over that mask, Bozak. The heft jig is up!
No deal, nerd.
Okay, that hand was on Stanley's side, so why is his sleeve yellow? Yes, even various clips are recycled on top of one another, and the laziest of the laziest, repeated character designs. It's one thing if they were all background characters, which happens, but one being a major character in the story? Come on. However, the backgrounds for the most part are well detailed. Credit is given to Jeff Starling for doing that after being on other TV shows like Batman the Animated Series, the HBO Spawn series, X-Men Evolution, and recently Avengers Assemble.
But even with all those defects within the show, the animation isn't horrendous, it still carries the story, and the mask continues to make everything wacky and bouncy all over the place, so at least it's fun.
Soundtrack and film score. Ah, here we go again, another composer who has no actual score to supply us collectors with. Making the series' music was a man by the name of Christopher Neil Nelson. The music to this show is highly bombastic and electrified by the sassy trumpets that played in the background. Adding to that is the snare drum percussion, probably referencing the Coco Bongo Club the mask always hits up. It just feels so alive and carefree, it would be odd not to get into the rhythm of things. There's also other cues for certain characters and scenes. For silly scenes, there's a slow trombone. For Calloway and Company, they have a much more marchy-sounding beat. There's even a cue for a simple embarrassment with loud, brassy horns. And for Pretorius, they have deep drudging tones that emphasize just how off his rocker he really is. The icing on the cake, though, was the show's theme song produced by Keith Baxter and sung none other than Rob Paulson himself. It pretty much flaunts the same style and sets the tone right away for each episode. Here are the mentioned tunes.
Mayor.
Ow! Whoa! What's going on here?
Thank you. You know, the Surgeon General has determined that being evil has been known to cause bad karma in laboratory rats.
Oh, you misunderstand me. I'm not evil. I'm a scientist, a chaos theorist.
I knew you were hip deep in this television nonsense.
Me? Television? Oh, why, Lieutenant, the only thing I've been viewing tonight are your selected shorts. Wholesome and kind, state of refined, totally out of my mind! Villains and ne'er-do-wells have never learned to decorate prison cells. Green goes with anything if they ask, see? Well, there's one last thing I've got to sing about! Open up wide and really shout! Whoa! Look out! This is the mask! Smoke it!
For Christopher Neil Nelson, he stopped scoring film after 2002, but his credits go back to productions like Ace Ventura Pet Detective, the cartoon, and Johnny Bravo. Keith Baxter, on the other hand, actually has more experience in the art department, being a story artist for Despicable Me and The Croods, though he has also composed music for the Beethoven cartoon as well.
And although these guys have a short list of music credits, I think this is what they should best be remembered for. Just too bad there's no film score.
Overall impression. Was it a flub or a job well done? This was definitely a TV show of the 90s, but it's also one that should be fondly remembered for its manic energy and comical visual gags. The voice cast attached for both villains and heroes are a ton of laughs. The animation, although spotty at times, is wildly creative. The writing contains more puns than can be accounted for, and the music is wholesomely upbeat and fun to listen to.
I don't know about you, but I definitely think that this cartoon is for the decade, and it will continue to be that for me, because it is smoking all right of it.